So I was trying to think of any sort of musical stories I have, and the only one I could think of was that in 10th grade I made a rap music video about the Salem witch trials. So a little context is in 10th grade I had my English class and we were reading a book, or it was a stage play called The Crucible. Now this was about in the late 1600s, Salem, Massachusetts had this huge epidemic where the entire colony started accusing one another of witchcraft, and they were all sending each other to jail, and it was very negative and toxic, and it was supposed to represent how society can sort of tear itself apart when fear grows rampant. And it was made written in 1953 as an allegory for the Red Scare during the time, where everyone was afraid of the spread of communism, and so they were accusing a lot of public officials and figures of being communists and pretty much destroying their careers with no actual factual basis on the accusations. And that was the main premise for this story, and that was what it was supposed to be teaching us. But what it ended up being was 4 weeks of high school kids very uninterestedly reading the lines like, I doth say she be a witch, and just so uninterestedly and so passively just being like, oh, she shall hang for this action, and then someone going, oh no, not me, I not be a witch. And it was just 4 weeks of an hour a day listening to this non-stop. And this was my Honors 3 English class, which I had to double up to take, and I, at the time, had this perception of high school as it was supposed to be so educational and it was going to really push us, and this was like a higher level honors course that I was taking early, and so I expected it to be so sort of challenging or interesting, and it was quite frankly a joke where the teacher took it so seriously, and he was trying to think he was teaching us some great deep truth about society and humanity, which the book technically had, but again, the presentation was just 4 weeks of, oh no, I'm not a witch. And this was a time where I had tried so hard the previous year to get good grades and work really hard, and I just started feeling really disheartened at the time with high school, and I felt like this perception that I'd always been told in my head of honors classes are supposed to be challenging and high school is going to teach us something useful and meaningful about life, were just sort of crumbling down in this class, and this project was sort of the breaking point. And I just thought it was so ridiculous how no one cared, and the teacher had this weird perception that it was way more serious than it actually was. And so I just sort of gave up on this whole thing I'd been pursuing of defining myself by my grades and trying so hard to be successful. And I just sort of made a parody of it. And for the final project, we were able to make whatever we wanted for this story. And most kids took the easy option of just making a simple poster with a couple pictures they found on Google Images and just restating basic plot points of the story, like they accused this woman of being a witch and she went to jail. And they got perfect scores. And I was just so disheartened by this, and so I just made a joke out of it because that's what it was to me. And so I made the first student ever, apparently, to make a song. I made a rapping, twerking music video using all the most ridiculous lines from the story, and just sort of, as an example for the rest of the year, just being very, making a joke out of the whole class and not trying hard. And I looked around at the projects, and kids, the ones who had the perfect scores, just did very simple, boring, uninterested, half-hour glue jobs about the story, and I had put in hours and hours into this project that was a joke and I expected to fail on. And I went to my friend's house and we recorded this a few hours after I got pepper sprayed, but that's a different story. And it was just like a big sort of FU to the teacher and to the school, and I was just so upset with the whole thing. And on reflecting about this story with today for this teaching, I realized, looking back a year later now, I was really just an asshole to this teacher because I was upset with school, and so I just sort of took my anger out on him. And I just realized like he didn't deserve any of that treatment I gave him. And this has been a common thing with me recently, where I'm looking back time and time again about my perceptions of how the world works and whatnot, and just completely realizing that everything I grew up to believe is not true. And I remember when I was young, I used to think that when you grow up, you become responsible and you don't mess up and you're a good and decent person. And then I look at my family of criminals and drug addicts and fathers who leave, and I've just recently been so amazed by how wrong I've been. But also realizing like that's scary to me, because a lot of people have been saying, well, you're growing as an individual because you're realizing that you used to be mean, or that the world doesn't work like that. But it's just so terrifying, because it means that there's still plenty of stuff that I don't know, but I think is true. And there's plenty of stuff, and no matter how hard I try, no matter how much I learn, I'm just never going to know it, because no one ever really seems to have anything figured out. And it's just going to be a lifetime of not knowing really what's going on and being completely disillusioned about everything. Thank you.